Now, I want to bring in James Farwell. He's a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute, and he joins us now live from Phoenix in Arizona. Good to have you here on the show. Now, I've just been speaking to our North America correspondent. I want to get your thoughts. I know it's too early for a reaction, but how does the US view this meeting between President Putin and Erdogan, given the timing? It comes, of course, after the announcement of the US troop withdrawal, and we've just had Lindsey Graham here last weekend.
Well, I think one, again, has to start with what does the U.S. posture in this region look like? And I think one needs to keep your eye focused on the following points that there seem to be a consensus on. Number one, that U.S. policy is focused on defeating Daesh. That's priority number one. It presents a threat to everyone in the region and beyond. Number two, this country does not want to see Syria used by Iran as a base for operations against other countries, including Israel. Number three, we have an obligation, most Americans think, I'm not speaking for the administration, I'm just speaking for myself here, but most Americans think that there is an obligation on the part of this country to protect the Kurds who have been our allies in the region. And fourth, above all, what we're looking for is, I think most Americans would like to see stability in the region. One of the interesting things about this conference, of course, is that Turkey and Russia have had somewhat different views about the 20-mile safe zone that's been talked about and about who should control it. The Russians and the Syrians, of course, think that Syria should control it. President Erdogan wants to see that fall under the control of Turkey based upon his perception that Kurds present an internal security threat to Turkey. The conference is probably a constructive approach from the point of view of Turkey and Russia, at least, that now they're at least talking about what they're going to do. I think one always has to treat these types of conferences with a certain degree of caution. The question isn't what do they say, but what do they do?
Mm-hmm. And just to look at the US-Turkey relationship right now, do you think the announcement of the withdrawal of US troops from Syria is really the tipping point, or marks a real turning point, rather, for US-Turkey relations?
It's interesting. It remains to be seen. Certainly, President Trump and President Erdogan seem to want to keep that relationship on a very stable footing. There have been tensions between the two countries. It strikes me that President Trump would like to ameliorate those tensions. But as with all things in foreign policy, the devil is in the details. Mm-hmm. The president has called for withdrawing troops from Syria. But the question is, what does that mean and what conditions are imposed? And I look to what Ambassador Bolton has stated as a more of a true reflection of where American policy probably is.
And you know, we did, as I mentioned, have Senator Lindsey Graham here in Turkey just last weekend. And when that meeting finished, there seemed to be a different mood compared to the meeting earlier in the month by John Bolton. What do you think, picking up on what our correspondent said, America doesn't speak with one voice. How are things right now in general, would you say?
Well, democracy, as you know, is a chaotic conversation, and there are lots of different points of view on virtually every issue that you'll see in this country. Senator Graham has his point of view. The president has his. Secretary Pompeo, Ambassador Bolton, I think, have theirs. But one thing I would suggest is that it seems to me unlikely that the secretary and the ambassador would have spoken as forcefully and concretely as they did without first clearing their remarks with the president. The president's public pronouncements have tended to be through tweets, and although he enjoys doing tweets and they certainly make news, tweets are not really a very good way to articulate a nuanced foreign policy. So again, I come back to the question of what are we really going to do? Mm-hmm. And you really do, when you're looking at American policy, need to stay focused on those four pillars that I've identified, because I believe that there is a bipartisan consensus in this country in support of those four pillars.
OK. James Farwell, thank you very much for speaking to us here on TRT World. James Farwell, Senior Fellow at the Middle East Institute.